What's going on, everybody? I'm here today with the review of the Moto Z unlocked version because this actually just came out about a week or two ago, and I've had it since the release. I've been waiting for the Moto Z to be unlocked because I'm on AT&T and I don't have access to a Verizon network, so didn't get to use the Moto Z when it first came out. But now it's unlocked for GSM carriers. Finally got my hands on this. And I gotta say, I am pretty impressed with the Moto Z. Let's just go into it right now with the design. And I gotta say, it's a fantastically designed phone. It is just so, it feels fantastic. The metal and the glass, it just combines into a fantastic feeling phone. My main gripe with the design is something that I don't like on a lot of Android smartphones. And it's something that not a lot of people cover for some reason, and I don't know why, but on a lot of Android smartphones, the reason I don't like the feel so much is because of the edges. They just don't feel as premium as something like an iPhone. They're just too sharp. Something like right here, like just back here, it does not feel good. It's like that on a lot of Android smartphones, where the back is just too sharp. Where the metal meets the glass, it's just too sharp. It's too hard of an edge. It doesn't feel rounded and smooth like an iPhone. And even the more rounded smartphones nowadays still can't touch the feeling of something like my iPhone right here. That just the way the curves are, and it's just you can't compare it. The way the glass meets the metal is almost seamless. It's almost seamless. It's not completely seamless. Obviously, it is still an edge, but it is to the point of where it is just premium. At least this does not feel premium to me. Maybe some people like the sharp edge. I personally do not. The Moto Z here, though, this is not the Force. This is just normal Moto Z. Is one of the thinnest smartphones on the market. It's 5.2 millimeters, I believe. And that is a good thing, but also a bad thing. Good thing is, well, the first time you pick it up, it is just deadly thin. I mean, it is just so thin. Here's a comparison again to the iPhone. I mean, side by side, this is the 6S Plus, by the way. It is just almost chunky in comparison. And I think that's so cool that smartphone technology has gotten so crazy that we can make 5.2 millimeter thin smartphones. But after that first impression, it starts to kind of, I don't know, it just didn't feel that great to me because it was so thin. It was to the point of where I felt like I was going to drop it. It wasn't a very reassuring phone, and that with the sharp edges, I really didn't like using this phone without a case, or in this case, the Style Shell mod. And that's something else I need to cover. A lot of YouTubers didn't really cover the fact that this phone actually came with the Style Shell case, I believe that's what they're called, and this little bumper here. And I think that's great because you can put the mod on the back, and that covers the back, and then the bumper covers the front, and it gives you a little bit of a lip. And I think that is an awesome addition, and a lot of reviewers haven't covered the fact that it comes with these two accessories, and I think that should be noted. That it does come with these, so you don't need to buy this separately. And I think that's great that it comes with one of these little mods in the box. And Motorola is pretty cool with that. They've given free cases in the past before with the Moto X and whatnot. Although, in my experience, the past Moto X case was not that great. I actually broke my bumper case for the Moto X Pure in the first month that I had it. But yeah, the design is new, it's great, and it feels good for the first hour or two, but the thinness kind of wears out, and it starts to become more of a flaw than something really good. Another thing that I noticed was these buttons right up here. These buttons are not the greatest. My personal power button is not that clicky, but the volume buttons are pretty clicky though. The thing is, they're just arranged in a kind of weird shape. They're just kind of equally spaced, and they're all way up here at the top. And it's not even the fact that it's way up here at the top. It's not a huge smartphone. This is a 5.5-inch AMOLED display. It's Quad HD, by the way. So it's not huge for me. I personally love using bigger phones, so I didn't find the placement that bad. It's just the fact that they're evenly spaced and they're the same size, and it's hard to tell them apart. And I have closed the phone before, just trying to turn the volume up or down, or turn the phone on when I tried to turn the volume down, and it's just not a huge fan. The pins on the back do look kind of ugly. Some people don't like that. I personally don't care. I think it actually looks fine. They actually feel pretty cool when you run your hands over it as well. I do think this phone is just absolutely beautiful. It's just the fact that it's a little bit too thin, and I personally haven't had the Moto X, or not Moto X, the Moto Z Force, and maybe that with the thicker battery or the thicker design overall, or maybe even the Moto Z Play will be a little bit better for that. But one thing is, I can tell you right now, this phone with the style shelf feels great. Once you add a little bit of thickness, and it's a little bit rounded here on the sides, it really makes this phone feel a lot better in the hand. And during daily use, I would recommend using this for the protection, and it just feels a lot better. Because I don't know, I can't stand it being this thin. Moving on, the screen. The screen is fantastic. It's Quad HD AMOLED, as I said before, 5.5 inches. I wish it could be a little bit bigger, but hey, what do you know? What can you do? I mean, this phone is made for the masses, and obviously most people don't like using huge, gigantic phones. So I guess I can deal with 5.5 inches. I'd prefer 6, but what can you do? It is a fantastic, fantastic screen. The colors are great on it. The only gripe I have with it is probably the brightness. It doesn't get as bright as something like a Samsung display, but man, it gets bright enough. I mean, it's clipping right now on my phone camera. So yeah, it gets plenty bright. And also, one thing to note, it gets pretty dim as well. Once again, not as dim as the Samsung displays, but in terms of color reproduction, in terms of, just how well the screen looks in daily usage, it is fantastic. I really have no complaints about the screen itself. Sure, in sunlight situations, sometimes it isn't bright enough, but for pretty much 95% of the time, you're not going to notice this. And you'll also notice I'm running the new Google or Nexus, what is it called? Pixel launcher, yeah. And that runs fine on here as well. And I've used the stock launcher for most of my review experience, I guess. In my time with the device, I've mostly used the stock launcher. But I just put this on today, and it runs fine. But now talking about the launcher, this thing is so fast. It's so quick. The software is just fantastic. As everyone knows, Motorola has always tried to stay true to Android with, trying to make a pure vanilla Android experience. And we have that here again. And pretty much this is almost the exact same software experience that we had on the Moto X. And, with the twist for the camera. We'll get into the camera later there. And, of course, the chop for the flashlight. And that works fantastic. It actually works better than the Moto X did, in my opinion. Sometimes I chop for them. Oh, yeah, well, I chopped there and it didn't really work. But sometimes I chop on the Moto X and it wouldn't go through. And here, it is better. So the Moto mods, or the Moto actions do work quite a bit better. And another thing to mention, you probably have seen it throughout the video, the wave for the ambient display. That's always been something in the Motorola phones, and it's still here to stay, and it still works fantastic. And with the AMOLED display this time around, it works better than the Moto X because it saves battery, and it looks cleaner, especially at night. If you're using the Moto ambient display at night, the backlight, or without the lack of the backlight, does definitely benefit this phone in terms of the ambient display. Also, the fingerprint scanner is crazy fast. It is just almost instant. A lot of people like to say that, oh, it's not as good as the iPhone fingerprint scanner because you can't just do that and it works. Well, that's the thing with the iPhone scanner, is that the iPhone, you have to press it. You have to press the phone. Sorry about that, guys. I had to take a call. But back to where I was. The fingerprint scanner is crazy, crazy, crazy fast on this phone. Main complaint, or actually not my main complaint, but a lot of people like to say that these capacitive fingerprint scanners aren't as fast as the iPhone. Because on the iPhone you can press it and it goes and you're in. The thing about the iPhone that you don't realize you're doing is, since it is a button, well, not on the iPhone 7 anymore, but at least on the iPhone 6S and 6, it is a button. And what happens is every time you press it, people say, oh, you can just press it and it opens, right, like this. And fine, didn't register there, but like that, all right? You can press it and it opens. And a lot of people say, oh, you can't do that on the, the capacitive fingerprint scanners. And the thing is, you don't know it, but since it's a button, every time you press it, you're putting pressure on it. And if you put the same amount of pressure on a capacitive button, it'll do the exact same thing. So obviously, if I take it and I try to just, tap it, obviously it's not going to work. Okay, yeah, actually it worked that time. That's what I mean. This thing is crazy fast. But if you press it like it's a button, if you treat it the same way as a button and you press it, it will work every single time. It'll be super duper fast. Definitely faster than the iPhone. If you just press it, it is crazy fast. It's just treat it like a button and it works. You don't even need to hold it. You literally just need to put pressure on it for, just act like you're pressing a button. You can try to move your finger fast, but if you put pressure on it, it'll work every single time. Every single time. If you press it like a button, it'll work every single time. And it's actually quite a bit faster than my 6S here. If we do a comparison, it's just no competition. Do it from the screen on. No competition. I've used my 6S for quite a while, so maybe it's a little bit old, but I mean, even if I start on the 6S first, it's just no competition. This thing is just crazy freaking fast, crazy smoking fast. Beats the crap out of the iPhone for now. Who knows? Maybe this thing will slow down. I've had some stuff with my Samsung phones that wherein the fingerprint scanner does slow down over time. My Note 5 fingerprint scanner got extremely inaccurate over time and slow. Same thing happened with my S7 Edge. Used it for like 3 or 4 months, and then the fingerprint scanner got extremely slow. And that could be a part of TouchWiz. I'm sure a factory reset would have helped that, but that was the main reason I sold my S7 Edge, was because the fingerprint scanner got really, really slow. I didn't feel like resetting it, and I was like, whatever, I need a new phone anyways. So I sold the S7 Edge, but that's not the point here. Point is, I don't think this thing's going to slow down. It is running a pretty toned down software experience compared to something like TouchWiz. Man, I just can't get over how fast this thing is. This thing is crazy, crazy fast in terms of actual performance with the Snapdragon 820 and 4 gigabytes of RAM. This thing is crazy fast, and the fingerprint scanner definitely boosts that. Since we're on the topic of the fingerprint scanner, though, down here you might notice the giant chin with the Motorola logo. Well, not the Motorola logo, but the Moto logo. Not a big fan of that. I mean, that chin is pretty huge. I mean, if you compare it to the iPhone, a lot of people make fun of the iPhone for the big bezels. If you look at it, these bezels are almost identical to what the iPhone has, if not a little bit bigger. So, yeah, not a big fan of those huge, chunky bezels. But, hey, what can you do? Also, you might notice that there's no more dual front-facing speakers. There's only one single front-facing speaker up top, which is the same speaker for your earpiece, for your calls and whatnot, but no dual front-facing speakers, which kind of sucks. That would have been actually pretty cool if they placed the speaker right here where the Motorola logo is. That would have been cool, and then the fingerprint scanners would still work, but I guess they didn't decide to do that. Also, while we're on the topic of audio, no headphone jack. This phone actually was one of the first, I don't believe it was the first, but one of the first phones to not have a headphone jack. And honestly, if you ask me, it isn't a giant deal. They do include an adapter in the box, although it is a pretty flimsy cable. Actually, it's so flimsy that I'm going to decide to bring it here. I'll be right. All right, so we are back, and I got the tiny little adapter that they include, the USB-C to 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. This thing, I don't know if you guys can see it on camera. It is pretty thin. It looks like it's not that bad, but I have my M50X wire here, and just look at the difference. It is just night and day. And yes, the M50X wires are a bit chunky, but in real life, once you get it, this does feel flimsy. It doesn't, I don't know. I don't like having this because It just feels like something else that can break. And I have my M50X here with the D brand skin, and these actually work fantastic with the Moto Z. They just plug into the adapter just like this, and then you just plug it into the bottom like you would if you were charging the phone, and you have audio. But first of all, you can't charge while you play your music through your headphones, which kind of sucks. Oh, by the way, some people are saying you just leave it on into your headphones, and it does work, but once again, it does feel like a piece that's going to break off. Another quirk that I found, by the way, while I'm talking about that, I have my Sennheiser Momentums right here. I love these headphones, by the way. Best $100 I've ever spent. The cable is an L-shaped. I don't believe that's the correct name, unless it is, but I call it the L shape. And this is meant to plug into a phone like this or like this. You know, it's meant to do that, right? But guess what? In this case, with this adapter, it plugs in like this, and it's just ridiculous. It just looks kind of weird. It's funky, and I don't exactly get how this is supposed to work. So this is another flaw I found with the phone. Just not a big fan of how it does that. But now that we're done with that, we can talk about what I was originally going to talk about with the audio. The output of the actual jack with the adapter included is pretty good. You guys probably aren't familiar with it, but I like to use an app called Power Amp, and that is a fantastic equalizer app. I actually have the full version, and what happens is basically you can tune your sound settings, pretty much basically what any equalizer would do. But I've noticed Power Amp to be extremely useful because you can toggle your bass. And you might be saying, well, every equalizer can allow you to toggle bass. Yeah, but this one works, especially with more high-powered like amps in the phones like the HTC 10, which sounds fantastic, by the way. The HTC 10 is great. The LG V10, the LG V20 that's coming out, you know, these are phones that have great amps and DACs inside of them, and Power Amp can take advantage of that, at least for me. With the M50Xs right here, I can I can turn up the bass real high, and these will shake my head with a phone that has a good amp. And this phone right here has a pretty good amp inside in terms of actual output of power. These are quite a little bit behind my Idol 4S. I'd say that's the best, closest competitor is my Idol 4S. My Idol 4S does have just a little teeny bit better of an amp. Neither of these are going to have the greatest DACs or whatever, but to be honest with you, only the most picky of audiophiles would notice the DAC, but any normal person can notice the amp. When you use an app like Power Amp and you're cranking up the bass, something like an amp is definitely going to help that. And in this case, this is very good. Definitely better than the average, definitely better than something like the S7, and on an iPhone, I mean, it's been in tests, it's shown that the amp is great, all that, but it doesn't have an amp like Power Amp, and that's why I like Android, and I like the just the fact that I can get an amp or an app like Power Amp that actually works in tuning the sound of my music. All the equalizer apps on iPhone are pretty crap, and not a big fan of that. Haven't found any app that even compares to Power Amp in terms of just boosting the bass. Not the sound of the bass, I mean actual bass that you can feel in your headphones. So yeah, that's a great, definitely a great bonus if you do decide to get this phone. Something else that's pretty good, not the best though, is the camera. This is I believe a 12 point something megapixel camera or a 13 megapixel camera. Apologies for not remembering, but this camera, this back camera right here, is pretty freaking good. I mean, it launches quite fast. Not something super fast like the Samsung double tap, but it launches quite quick, and you got all your modes right here. And I believe this has optical image stabilization as well. Here's your Pro mode. Not a crazy good Pro mode though, because I don't know. Basically, the only time I ever use Pro mode is for the long shutter speed, and this only goes up to half a second, which is not the greatest. I love phones like the OnePlus 3, LG V10, LG V20, even LG G4. Huawei P9, all those phones go up to 30 seconds shutter speed. I know because I've used it, and it's fantastic for low light shots. When you're shooting in almost pitch black darkness, you're going to definitely love having that 30-second long exposure with a nice tripod. You're going to create some amazing effects. Trust me, I've created some beautiful photos on phones like the LG V10 with a 30-second shutter speed. And some people would see that and say, wow, was that a professional camera or something? No, it was with my smartphone with a 30-second long exposure. And although in auto mode this is fantastic, it is quite poor, I've noticed, in just focusing. It's just, if I just whip it out and try to focus and shoot at something, it's not going to be fast as my S7 Edge that I used to have, or even my iPhone in terms of focusing speed. It's just not very quick, and the actual viewfinder is quite laggy. I don't know if you can tell just by looking at it, but it is quite laggy. I'm not in the best lit environment right now, but even in well-lit environments, the viewfinder is a little bit laggy. Video is great, shoots up to 4K UHD video. That looks pretty good as well. Definitely not as stable as something like my iPhone or even my S7 Edge or Note 5. Those have better stabilization, but this is very, very good. But I had to compare it with those other high-end phones because this is a quite high-end price. This is $699 for a 64GB unlocked Moto Z if you decide to purchase it right now on Amazon or on B&H or wherever you want to purchase it from. It is $700, and that is quite expensive, and I'm going to need to compare it to something else at $700. And in terms of the camera, it doesn't stack up 100%. It is fantastic. It definitely blows the pants off of anything lower than that, such as a ZTE Axon 7, the Idol 4S that I have, anything else in the mid-range, except maybe the OnePlus 3. The OnePlus 3 does have a very, very good camera, and I'd say this is probably comparable to that camera. But I don't think it's as good as the other $700 smartphones like the S7. Don't think it's at that point yet, there yet. Sorry if you can hear the wind, guys. I'm in the middle of a rainstorm right now. And here's the 5-megapixel selfie shooter, and that is pretty good as well. It is wide-angled, but it is not as wide as the S7 or the S7 Edge, but definitely wider than something like the iPhone or any other normal lens for that matter. And you actually have your front-facing flash, which works quite well. The Idol 4S also has a front-facing flash, but it was implemented quite poorly because the flash is right next to the camera. And when you're taking a selfie, you'll notice the gigantic blur in your photo in one corner. And it's because the flash is right next to it. In this case, with the Moto Z, don't have that problem. They designed it quite well with the flash being away from the camera, farther enough to be usable in where it won't mess up your actual photo that you're taking, which is great. Definitely enjoy that. The camera performance, I know I said it's not the greatest, but for the normal person, it's going to be fantastic enough. One thing to also note is the back camera has quite a lot of sharpening, a lot more than something like an iPhone. Again, an iPhone's quite a lot softer, but this camera was quite aggressive in the sharpening to the point of where it reminded me of something like the Note 5 and the S6. That is not good, just so you know, because the Note 5 and S6 had a crazy amount of sharpening. Back in the days, Samsung had this crazy idea that sharpening was everything, and they would apply crazy amounts of sharpening, and you know what? It just did not look good, and it doesn't look the greatest here either. And what else do we have? Battery life. Right. Battery life is mediocre at best. Flossie Carter has said it before, that the phone, I love Flossie Carter, by the way, but the phone is quite well optimized. And I agree, it is quite well optimized. This battery life is pretty much in line with any other 3,000 milliamp hour smartphone. The LG G5 that I've tried, this is right up there with the LG G5, and that has a 3,000 milliamp, or not a 3,000 milliamp, 2,800 milliamp, and this definitely has just as good, if not better, performance in battery than the LG G5, but it is definitely not touching something like the Galaxy S7 Edge with a 3,600 milliamp hour battery, but that's what the Moto Z Force is for, and definitely definitely does not touch the battery life of something like my iPhone 6s Plus. But then again, pretty much no Android phone that I've used so far touches the battery life on my iPhone 6s Plus. Standby battery on that is just fantastic. I swear, the second you turn the screen off, the battery just stops draining right there. Some Android phones just can't get that. Definitely better battery life than the Idol 4S. The Idol 4S actually quite poor battery life, and people had said, "Oh, the Snapdragon 652 is using the Idol 4S. It's way efficient. The battery life is through the roof." No, the 652 kind of sucks, to be honest. It's not that powerful, although it is quite powerful in benchmarks. It's just as good as the A10. But in the Idol 4S, I noticed the Snapdragon 652 got extremely hot. And it was not nice to the battery at all. But yeah, if you think about it here, I get about 3.5 to 4 hours of screen on time, which is quite good for something with a Quad HD display and only 2,600 milliamp hours of battery. And I think that's great, but you have to go into it, or when you're buying this phone, you have to go into it thinking about how small the battery is. If you just expect top-of-the-line, best battery performance, you're not going to get that from this phone. Something like Galaxy S7 will outperform this phone in terms of battery life. It's just, I'm sorry, there's no replacement for milliamps. And honestly, if you just go into it thinking this is only 2,600 milliamps, I shouldn't expect the world from this battery, then you will be fine. You will definitely not be disappointed with this phone's battery life. Moving on to another big part that a lot of people would definitely buy this phone for is the Moto mods. This is the style shell, as I said before, and these are so easy. I love these. You just throw them on and they just clip on, and it's just fantastic. Some people noted that the Moto Z Play had, I believe it was Michael Fisher, who had stated that the Moto Z Play with the style shell mod was kind of like, didn't feel like it was completely sticking. And I have to say that I have the same problem here. I don't know if you guys can hear it. It's just, you guys hear that? Yeah, it's moving around. It's definitely not completely stable. It's not like a case where it just feels like one solid piece. There is a little bit of movement, but honestly, it's not super noticeable, but it is kind of annoying when you do notice it. But this one that comes in the box, it's free, so I'm not going to complain. And it does feel quite good. It's kind of rubbery almost. It's not, this is definitely not wood. I know it looks kind of like wood, but it's not. It feels kind of rubbery, kind of plasticky. But it feels good. It definitely feels good. And with the metal rails, you still get a bit of that premium feel. And with the added thickness, like I said in the start of this video, it definitely helps. And also, if you'd like to have full protection or whatever, this case is basically just going to cover the front. It actually leaves the back completely. So the Moto mod covers the back, and the little bumper covers the front. And this has quite a big lip. If you maybe the camera's not capturing it 100%, but the lip is quite big on this. It's quite tall, I guess you could say, and it definitely will protect your screen. I've been using it without a screen protector and for a couple weeks, and there's fingerprints on it, but pretty much no scratches. No scratches anywhere that I can see, and I think that's great. It's Gorilla Glass 4, works fantastic. The Hasselblad True Zoom Moto Mod, long story short, this is all right. I mean, if you can get it for the $100 that I got it for, I bought this through Amazon, and they're having a deal right now for the $200 off the Hasselblad Moto Mod, and yeah, and so is B&H, by the way. B&H is having the same sale. So you can get the phone and the Hasselblad Moto Mod for $800. So, I mean, in that case, it's not. I'd say it's worth it. For $100, I would definitely not pass up this deal, but it's not worth $300. After using this for like a few days, I actually only took it out a few times. The only time I ever found it useful was for the zoom. And a lot of people say, oh, you don't zoom in on photos anyways, but a lot of people that say that haven't used an actual DSLR. In an actual DSLR, yes, you do zoom a lot to get the best photos. A lot of the photos you see online on Instagram, those professional looking photos, are using the zoom. And I'm not saying if you get the Hasselblad True Zoom that you're going to get DSLR quality photos. You're not. Don't expect that. The sensor is pretty much the same as a smartphone sensor. The only thing that's different is the zoom. The depth of field, the aperture, and all that is not going to be that much better compared to something like your Moto Z. But if you need the zoom, if you like the zoom, if you like taking pictures, I'd say for $100, worth it. Anything more than that, not worth it. It also feels great, by the way. The build quality is not fantastic, but the actual like grip right here, it actually feels quite good, and it fits in your pocket relatively easily as well. And basically, that's about it. I mean, there's not really much else to say about the Moto X, or the Moto Z, my bad. But overall, I would definitely recommend this phone, especially if you want to buy into the Moto Mods ecosystem. I haven't had the phone long enough to get a bunch of Moto Mods yet, but I think the Moto Mods are a very, very cool idea. Being able to transform your phone in just a few seconds with a mod is great. Main problem I have with the mods right now is the price. The Moto Mods are all pretty much overpriced. Like I said, the Hasselblad camera, overpriced for $300. Projector, overpriced for $300. You could definitely get better portable projectors for half the price. And you're not linked to that, as in you're not tethered. Because if you do use the projector, you're going to have to set your phone down like this or whatever, and you're just going to have to project against the wall or whatever. But you're not going to be able to use your phone while projecting. So I definitely would say something like a mobile projector would be better for that price. If the projector was $100, $50, all right, probably wouldn't be the same quality if it was $50. But for $100 for the same projector, that's worth it. The sound boost, the speaker, is $80. Again, not a big fan of that. I mean, you can definitely get a better portable speaker for $50, and it's gonna, I'd say, outperform this thing. And it's, I don't know. I just don't find the price that appealing. But in terms of the idea, just snapping on attachments to your phone, I think that's very, very, very cool. And they do work pretty well. They stick on quite nice, except for this one has a little bit of play, but it's not a huge deal. And this one actually really does improve the actual handheld feel of the phone. But overall, I'd say my main gripe is just with the Moto Mods is the price. Everything else is fine. Oh, one thing I did not get to was the charging speed. This thing comes with, but just a heads up, I freaking love all the Motorola turbochargers that they've included with the Nexus 6. I love the blocky look, and I love how fast they charge. Motorola turbocharging is best in class, if not best in any smartphone. I've heard the Oppo VOOC charging is fantastic, but in terms of my experience, dash charging is number one, and then Motorola turbocharging is second place. It is arguably one of the fastest. Actually, no, it is actually the second fastest in my testing that I've ever used on a phone. And this is right up there with the Moto X that I had used with the turbocharging. And this thing just charged crazy fast with the USB-C. It is just, you plug in and you charge and you're good to go. It's just great, especially if you're on the go, if you're halfway through your day and you're down to 50% and you don't think you're going to last the rest of the day, especially with something like this. You're going to have not that great of a battery life. You're going to have battery range anxiety, and you're going to say, crap, am I going to have enough charge? Boom, you take the turbocharger, you plug it in for, 20 minutes, and you get from 50%, it's going to get you about 1% a minute. But if you're at 20%, plugging in for 20 minutes could get you 30, 40% charge, which is fan-freaking-tastic. So that pretty much rounds out my Moto Z review. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Sorry for so freaking long, but I do like to make the videos, informative. Definitely, if you're spending $700, I would like you to be able to make an educated decision on which phone to buy. And honestly, with newer phones out like the OnePlus 3, the ZTE Axon 7, the Idol 4S, I don't even recommend the Idol 4S that much, to be honest. My review is going to be coming up for that soon. But if I'm completely honest, I would probably pick a OnePlus 3 over this. If you're talking about price, if you consider the price, something like a OnePlus 3 is a lot more pleasing to me, actually. It'd be more satisfying to me because you're spending $400. You're getting a fingerprint scanner that's just as fast. You're getting, in my opinion, a better ROM. I love the Motorola ROM with all its features and the Moto voice and all that. But I'm sorry, the OnePlus with its customizability is just one step ahead. And the competition is fierce nowadays in 2016 with all these budget phones coming out. Even the Moto Z Play. Motorola is creating competition for itself. The Moto Z Play is pretty much 70 to 80% of what this phone is for almost half the cost. And it's just hard to deny that, especially with the Moto Z Play's rumored crazy battery life. You know, I haven't personally had the Moto Z Play yet, but I am planning to get my hands on one. And definitely I will do a review if I get a Moto Z Play. But yeah, comparing it to the competition nowadays, I probably wouldn't pick this over the competition. But in terms of just an actual good design and a good idea with the Moto mods, I love it. I love the phone. It's just not justifiable for the price. $700, I think you could get better phones. But thank you everyone for watching, and have a good day. Stay tuned for future uploads. I'm probably going to be doing my 1 year later review of the iPhone 6s Plus or my Idol 4S, one or the other. So yeah, thank you guys again for watching.